Those Zoomers love to speak.
So Vicky, Carrie, and Don, if you'd like to speak, can you please use the raised hand icon?
This is Don Glenn. I'm good. No comment.
All right.
Nobody else in Zoom. We have one person in attendance inside the township hall. Would you care to make a public comment?
Yes.
And could you please state your name for the record?
Yeah, Linda Slopesima, Township President. So I looked at your meeting minutes. I thought they well represented what happened a month ago at your meeting. There were references in there into getting comparative information from like documentation from the Kalkaska interview process. It was also mentioned to obtain similar information from Leelanau as far as interview questions and rubric. There was also a notation about investigating the legalities of an interview pre-application. And then finally, there was discussion about part of the initial requirements of this team was to put together a process flow. So as I looked in the packet, I didn't see anything regarding any of those items. I want to remind the committee here that we currently have a hold on marijuana applications until April 9th, 2022, which isn't very far off. I would recommend at this point that you place a hold, and you would probably need township approval for this, board approval, but recommend a special use permit and application moratorium on marijuana activity here at the township until you have your work done. It is concerning to me that that hold is potentially expiring on the 9th of April. And I believe if you actually are required to start accepting those applications, it would probably expose the township to even more litigation on marijuana if you don't have your requirements 100% defined at the start of that process. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one other individual stopped in. Would you care to make a public comment?
Yeah.
Let the record show the public comment was offered. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Did everybody have an opportunity to review and look over the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2/21/2022 special meeting minutes.
We have a motion.
I'll second it.
By Goss and a second by Jacobson to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor to approve?
Aye.
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 Guys are beating me to the punch here. All those opposed? Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda are the application checklists. And I know you'll see in the packet where Cheryl modified some of the applications that we're working on to follow the ordinances. And that's almost exactly, from my point of view, what we were looking for, something to help guide not only the applicant, but ourselves in making sure that all the information that we're asking for is being collected and we're documenting it. Anyone else have a chance to look at those or have any comments that they'd like to add?
Two things. First one is on both of them, this set of checklists. It says applicant, and then it says ZON, admin, zoning
Administrator.
Some people put ZA.
Okay,
Zoning administrator is probably a little long to put there.
I guess
At the
that's what it was, but
Yeah,
I
I
thought
had to abbreviate.
everybody gets pretty uptight about not having things real clear. And on the second one is on the, I think it's the medical. On the adult use one, it's a just kind of a, I don't know, typographical clerical thing, but we have this really nice page 2 of 6, page 3 of 6, page 4 of 6, page 5, page 6. There's nothing there. Should we have that same pattern on the rest of them?
That would make sense.
Yeah, would.
Just
I'm a big fan of seeing what page I'm on and how many pages are in a total document, even if it's a book or a zoning ordinance, but sure. I like
The only
that.
reason I'm not OCD is because the letters are in the wrong order. So
I can fix that. You wouldn't have it on page 1, of course, but yeah, on both applications 5 and 6, it doesn't indicate what page it is of how many pages. I can fix that.
I have a couple items also. On the, on the first change here in red, the bottom of the application, first page. I wonder if the word, the new writing, the new sentence says, all documents should be clearly identified and submitted in the same order as they are listed in this application. I wonder if the word should could be replaced with the word shall. Should, to me, sounds suggestive. Shall sounds definite.
yes.
And then on page 3, and this may just be me, I am not the greatest reader. Sometimes it takes me 2 or 3 readings through to get to something, to get it. But the very last paragraph on this, it says, the statement regarding any other marijuana establishment, blah, 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 goes on to say, and then in the very last sentence, it says, but the last line, I think their involvement in should be moved up to between regarding and any in the first sentence, in the first line. To me, that reads clearer. I was confused with this. I had to read it 3 or 4 times to,
Yeah, because it says state and another state.
yeah, and if those 3 words were moved up, it reads clearer to me. Now, that's just me. It's just a suggestion.
It is. Goes on. Yeah.
I wouldn't have a problem with that if everybody else agrees.
I'm good with it either way.
So it's going to be a statement regarding their involvement in any other.
Yes.
Okay,
To me, the statement regarding it is specified right there altogether.
right. And then on that last line, within the state or another state, period, that would just end.
Right, yes,
And I
correct.
think we can take out that comma after the first state, within the state or another state.
Any other comments on the interview questions or the application or the application checklist that we have there?
I do want to say one thing, and I didn't catch this when I was modifying this, but David had brought this up, that he said, should we add to the checklist, asking whether they have, applicants have their pre-qualification
State permit.
certificate. So I didn't add that here, but he did suggest that. So is there someplace we want to add that?
Wouldn't that have to be at the top part?
I'm sorry, what's that, Heidi?
Wouldn't it have to be up at the top part in the application because you're asking if they've been pre-qualified for their state license, I take it?
I would say if you had, yes, if you were going to add that, it would be like right near the top of the application after their information. Do you have a pre-qualification? You know, maybe either right before or right after the type of facility that they're selecting to operate.
I don't have a problem with that.
Sounds good to me.
Between type of facility and proposed facility?
Anywhere in there, yes.
Okay, so we're gonna add, do
Wouldn't you
you
want
have,
it above it? Because wouldn't you want to know that they've already been pre-qualified from the state?
Can I wade in on this just for a second?
yeah, oh yeah, please. It was your
Since
suggestion.
since we talked about this, I got a chance to look at the marijuana regulation guidelines from the state. And it says that they will send to the clerk or the clerk's designee, the state will send to an email address confirmation of this compliance, so my thought was if the state's sending out an email, then that ought to be a fairly timely thing. I can understand the regular paperwork might take a little longer to get it, but if they've been approved, do we have any idea how quickly? Because if we don't have an email from the state saying they've gotten their approval or their pre-approval, then
I work in a marijuana community and I have yet to see the state send out an email before the applicant actually makes application at the
Oh, okay.
local.
so that won't help.
The applicant may be doing that, but because in some of their paperwork, they're going to be asked for the local information. But
Mhm.
I work in Whitewater Township and we have yet to get an email from the state saying, hey, Joe Blow is
Is
applying
pre-qualified.
for something in your
Yeah.
jurisdiction and he's pre-qualified.
Oh,
Not saying they don't do it, but I've yet to see one.
oh, okay. All right. Have you made any connections to the state in terms of identifying who should get that aforementioned email?
No, I
So it would
haven't.
just come to you by default then.
Whatever their documents say,
It says to the clerk, parenthesis, or designee
okay,
email address.
right. Yeah, because I think once you get all your zoning in place, the clerk is required to report to the marijuana regulatory agency that you're a community that has accepting these kinds of applications for these kinds of licenses, so.
And they'll also bring in a certificate of attestation that you'll need to sign
Okay,
to take to the state to go through the second phase.
the applicant will bring that
Yes,
in.
yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so are we putting that question in that location then?
I think we should.
Let you know if you're wasting your time or not.
Well, but I think if they say no, it may just be because they just don't have it
That
yet, but
could
that's
be
not gonna
too.
disqualify them.
Yes.
It's just gonna be
Yeah.
alerting the reviewer of the application that, okay, they don't have this yet, but
Or we could
they need
even,
to get it.
we could even consider this for the next topic if we're considering interview questions also.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that pre-qualification
Oh, yeah,
gives,
you could do it.
gives
that way.
us or them a sense of urgency because that means they've gone halfway to 3/4 away through the state process. And I understand that with the applicants that I've talked to and the state people that I've talked to, that if they have their pre-qual, it's like saying there's about a 99% chance that you're going to be approved at the state level,
I see.
providing you've given us good information
Right,
to give them the assurance they can go on to the next phase and start applying for zoning.
I see, yeah.
With the application fees that we receive, the $5,000 before they
Right.
spend that, they're
Right.
kind of assured through the state that they're going to get that portion of it.
Right, yeah, yeah.
If it's said then that one of the things that would be required, at that point in it would be a brief description of where you are in that process. You're awaiting the paperwork back. You've put your paperwork in, you're not in that at all someplace, just a brief description of that. Then we would, like Bob was saying, we'd know where they were. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes, that's what the prequel kind of tells us, that they've already done most of the work at the state. And the way it was explained to me by the applicants that have been through it and the state was that they've turned in 99% of everything they need to turn in.
Right.
Most of the background work has been done. And just as the name implies, you're pre-qualified unless something shows up in the next whatever comes in late, there's a good chance the answer is going to be yes to you. And that, I think that gives them a sense of urgency. And they did that on purpose because they didn't do that in the beginning. And they were trying to apply for the state here. They were going into local communities, laying down, 5,000 to 25,000, depending on the number of licenses they were applying for. The last thing you want to do is see the state come back, oh, wait a minute, no, we can't. It
Yeah.
just, yeah.
So then we want to insert this question, have you received your pre-qualification certificate between type of facility? Or where do we want to put, is that where we want to put that? And is
I would
that,
think it would make sense right below the types of uses, and you just put a simple question in, not that it's a deciding question, but have you received pre-qualification for the uses that you selected above? The types of licenses.
for the uses selected above? Have you received pre-qualification for the uses selected above? And we don't need to put the state in there, pre-qualification from the state. I mean,
I would think you'd have to say what kind of
Yeah.
pre-qualification. I think you'd have to say it from the
yeah,
state.
exactly. Instead of them just saying, well, yeah, I pre-qualified.
Might
but-
have their land use permit for the building they're gonna build.
Right.
Yeah,
That's not what we're
exactly.
asking
Okay,
for.
so as I understand it, the question is going to be, have you received pre-qualification from the state for the uses selected above?
From the state of Michigan.
We want the state of Michigan.
Not legal in some states, Cheryl. Anybody else have an objection to that?
What's that?
Using the state of Michigan?
I don't have a problem with that.
Mike?
We can go on for paragraphs if you want.
No,
Have
I'm
you-
just
have you
saying,
received-
but don't you think you should clarify what state, considering it's not legal in the states?
Well, they
Well,
wouldn't
we're
be
talking
getting it.
about our township.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And there
A
there are
legal
other things in the
document, ladies and
application that
gentlemen.
imply Michigan, so.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's not a problem with putting state of Michigan. Pre-qualification from the state of Michigan for the uses selected above.
And that same question would go on both the applications for the adult use and the commercial medical.
Yeah, I'll
Correct.
put them on
Okay.
both.
Any other comments on the application checklist? All right, let's move on to interview questions. I know the couple of us are going to check on. a
Oh, I
couple-
had one, sorry, Bob.
Go ahead.
It says,
Backtrack.
I'm sorry, copies of a valid unexpired driver's license or state issue ID for all owners, directors, officers, and managers of the proposed facility. I'm gonna verify that.
Where are we at, Heidi? I was still making a note about
I'm on
something.
page 2 of 6. Copies of a valid unexpired driver's license or state issued ID for all owners, directors, officers, and managers of the proposed facility. How we checking that?
Are we going to check what? Check.
If
whether-
they have a valid driver's license?
Well, we make them produce it and we get a copy. We do that for employees. They have to produce their driver's license and their social security card or a passport card.
And you're
and then
not
we make a
gonna
copy
check
of
it
it.
at all?
I'm sorry, what's that?
You're not gonna check it? You're not gonna make sure it's
Well, when we have a
valid
copy
or-
of it, we can check it off.
I didn't mean check it off. I meant call the police and find out if it's unexpired or not. You're giving them a license to grow pot.
Well, your driver's license has an expiration date on it.
Okay, Cheryl, if I get a ticket and I'm in between court cases and I've been drawing my case out like 5, 6, 7 months, my license might already be suspended and nobody might even know it. So that's, okay, if you just wanna,
And I think we're not looking for the driver's license to check their record. We're just looking for
Who
identification.
they are.
It's for identification purposes,
Okay.
not that we,
well, it says copies of a valid unexpired driver's license. It, to me, when you say that, to me, it means somebody's gonna check and make sure the license is valid. But if you don't wanna do that, okay.
well, I mean, when you look at the license, whether it's valid or not, because.
Not
there's
if
an
I'm
ex-
giving them a permit for something, I'm gonna double check it. but you can do what you want. If this was a liquor license, would you feel the same way?
And it says or state issued ID, and those are, you know, those don't come with any kind of
How would
driving
you
record attached.
propose that we verify that it's?
I have no idea. I mean, I could see why they want a copy of it, but in this instance, you know, you're asking them to put down a non-refundable fee of thousands of dollars. You're making it kind of easy here, but if you don't, I mean, is there are you gonna even bother to do a background check at all? Anything?
I think that's a separate part of the application.
Yeah, that's a separate
Okey-dokey.
question.
But the driver's license, I mean, I look at people's driver's licenses all the time, you know, for voting and stuff like that. And I mean, it's
Well,
either
then
an
let me ask
expired,
you this
it's either
question.
expired or not
Are you gonna
expired.
check question 2, evidence of a valid sales tax license for the business if a license is required by state law or local regulations? Are you gonna check and see if they've applied even for a sales tax license?
The sales tax licenses have the expiration date on them also. They're only good for 1 year.
Any other comments that you have, Heidi?
Nope.
Anyone? Okay, any other comments? Last call for interview questions? No one?
We were
Oh.
just getting to that.
Oh, that was the application checklist. I'm sorry. I was
Yeah.
trying to skip right over that. We're now at interview questions. And I know a couple of us were checking some communities, and Heidi, were you going to check Leland? No, I know I checked the village of Kalkaska.
No, I didn't get there. I was too busy with the
Okay.
budget. Sorry.
All right, let me
I
put in
checked
my,
with, I have interview questions from. Let me get there.
let me get started on the
Yeah, go
interview
ahead, Bob.
questions. And I don't want to say I came up with interview questions because I had concerns about interview questions, and hearing the comments, I know that Mike made when they went over to the village of Kalkaska. I did talk to the Cash Cook.
Mhm.
That's his name, at the village of Kalkaska. I think they were in a little different situation at Whitewater Township. They knew ahead of time, or they had it brought to their attention ahead of time that when they opt in and develop their ordinances, that they were going to be inundated as a community by applicants for this. And they wanted to make sure, you know, how do we narrow down the list? Do we use some kind of rubric, the type that Traverse City had thrown out by the circuit court? Or, you know, and I'm always concerned with this because I work in an entirely different world. If you want to build a house on your property, here are the standards. If you meet the standards, I don't care who you are or what I think of you as an individual, I have to issue you the permit if you meet all of the standards and are qualified. So when I talked to Mr. Cook a little bit more, what they were doing, and I'm not saying it was right or wrong, he did disclose that the interview process was approved by village council, but he avoided the question, or not avoided, but didn't answer the question on whether those types of questions were vetted by the attorney.
Mhm.
And I'm always concerned with that because they were asking questions and making it conditioned upon or assigning an order of priority. Do you own or lease property in the township? I don't know if that's a lawful question to ask somebody.
Yeah.
Do you know, a real estate option did not qualify them, so they started narrowing people down.
Okay.
Also, questions of community sensitivity.
Right.
You know, somebody wanted to put one in right next to the library, you mentioned as a person from. Well, that wouldn't work. Well, if you want to put a house in next to Cheryl, I can't care what Cheryl thinks. If you meet all the standards, I have to say yes to you.
Mhm.
You know, I don't want to get into the whole land use issue. It's more of a due process, personal rights issue. And I would hate to get into a situation of asking questions that we have no right asking.
Mhm.
You know, all the information in the application, I have no problem with.
Mhm.
Communities are doing this. But knowing that we have limited the number of licenses, and a lot of people say even that's a lot of licenses, but seeing the
Mhm.
businesses that are stacking licenses, those could go relatively quickly.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know, through that type of standard. So I would want to make sure that Are interview questions even appropriate? I don't know.
I was just going to ask that same question. You know, when I brought this up at the last meeting, I was pretty clear that, you know, they have different circumstances than we do. And I'm not sure that it would work for us, what they were doing, but I thought it was they were pretty community oriented
Yes,
with their,
yes.
with what they were up to. So, but then after hearing your comments last month, it sounds like we don't really have, we're not in that situation whatsoever, and maybe it just doesn't work for us.
I mean, the theory behind what they were doing, I thought was right. They wanted to make sure that if a business was coming to the community, that they were vested. But when I hear business, I don't think just marijuana. Would we treat another business owner like that?
Mhm.
You know, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Right.
Correct.
Other than that, we did talk a little bit more about that, and I thought it made a lot of sense because they were interested in, you know, were you going to be sensitive to community needs? Because they understood that not everyone in the community was pro marijuana, but not everyone was anti marijuana.
Mhm.
And location had a lot to do with
Mhm.
how it would be perceived. We talked about the fact that they have an industrial area, we have an industrial area, but when you get out into ag, it seems like you're more in the community, even though it's less dense, you're more in the community versus being in an industrially zoned area where it's more, for lack of a better word, accepted type of
Right.
use.
I wonder, you know, so the ordinance talks about the, and we haven't developed this flow chart yet. We haven't gotten to that. But, you know, I wonder what happens if the board, you know, because you're getting the applications, you're making sure that everything's there. And then I don't remember, you know, the board's making the ultimate decision on that. And I'd have to reread the ordinance again. Are you're reviewing the applications for
I'm reviewing
completeness?
the application for completeness to
Right.
determine that all of the
Right.
information
Right,
is there that the board is asking for.
right. And then I don't know, is the board, you know, and then are we going to ask, for instance, the board can't take those applications to a meeting because that information can't be divulged.
Non-disclosed.
So, you know, business plans and all that kind of stuff and all this personal information and everything. So then what if the board has questions of an applicant? So getting away from this pre-application process, but what if the board would have questions based on something that came in the application?
Oh, that's always possible. That's
Right.
that's always possible. And that's my concern too, when I was talking to Mr. Cook, some other comments that he made is they did not make their applications available online
Right.
at all.
Right,
You had to physically be there in body and spirit, you know, and
Yeah.
meet with somebody.
Yeah.
And
and that was when they did the interview.
yes, and he was saying, you know, it might have been just as one individual or a committee of people, and
Yeah.
I'm really concerned when you're doing that. I'm concerned if Whitewater Township only had 3 buildable lots left,
Mhm.
you know, and 10 people were waiting in line. How do I interview them to see who gets it?
Yeah,
I'm always in the habit that I process my workflow for the most part on a first come, first serve,
yeah,
based upon the information. If this application has 90% of the information and this application only has 70% of the information, I'm going to spend more time on this and while I'm waiting for time
Yeah.
here. And I see treating marijuana the same way. I don't know how to, if you have 50 licenses available or 3 pieces of property and you're looking at them, I don't know if you have 3 complete applications that I said are complete. Now, that doesn't mean they're complete to your satisfaction. They're complete based upon the bare you know, essentials of what the application calls for.
Mhm.
How do you assign different weight to the applications in that selection process?
And just to let you know, I don't remember, we've had so many meetings, can't remember which meeting this happened at, but a board regular meeting. We are pursuing getting like a scoring rubric
Mhm.
for applications, something that, and that was gonna come from the attorney's office, actually. Ron was supposed to be getting that information for
I
us.
think that would be a good idea. If
Yeah.
the attorneys are behind a scoring rubric,
Yeah,
then I think the board should feel comfortable. Well, one, are you a landowner? Or do you own land?
yeah.
Are you going to be the operator or are you just the landowner leasing it?
Well,
Yeah,
and whether it's comes down to some
Mhm.
kind of point system,
Yeah,
you know, where you get so many points if you're, you know, this and so many points for
Sure.
that, whatever these criteria come up to be, you know, so maybe we don't need to worry about interview questions. On, you know, pre-interview questions. And on our application, now not this one, because we've modified this application, but the prior application that was approved, that was in the board packet. So it was already online.
yes.
Anybody could have gone
Mhm.
online and gotten it. Now, we're not accepting applications right now. And so then we would probably if someone said, well, I want to file one, we'd say, well, we're modifying the form and
Sure.
we don't have the form ready yet, you know, but, so I think a lot of things have to converge.
Well, we're an advisory committee. I would think that if the board's already on that track, I would think that we need to find out from the attorney, one, are pre-application interviews acceptable?
Right,
And two, you know, what type of rubric or scoring system is the
Yeah.
attorney coming up with that will help the township board,
yeah,
you know, weigh those applications?
yeah, that's right,
Like I say, if the two of you come and both your applications are complete,
right,
like, you know, I have to say yes to both of you.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to build on the same lot, that's a problem.
that
Yeah.
won't be a problem.
But that gets down to more paperwork, you know, and that's what Cash Cook was talking about in the village of Kalkaska. They were talking about, do you own the property? That's a higher priority. You're going to run the business. That's a higher priority. You're leasing the property from this guy. That drops you down just a little. You have an option to purchase the property. That doesn't even qualify you to get an application. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. How do you treat the out of towners, out of staters, you know?
Yeah, that's
that-
right.
That have a lawful right to apply for, you know, this
Yeah,
in
that's
your
right.
state. So
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
are my concerns anyhow.
It seems to me that one of the, a big concern pretty much everybody's gonna have is this, you know, the location kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so I think I said something about this the last time we met, is where do the zoning ordinances come into play on this? The state says we're not gonna make any rules about where the locations can be, but municipalities can do that.
That's correct.
So it seems to me that one of the questions that could be asked on the first page of each of these, turn near the bottom, the proposed establishment will operate within, check one, structures pre-existing. Where are your structures? Can you show us on the map where they are? Do you own these or are you renting them? You know, what kind of continuity are you going to have there? And if you're proposing to produce something, how are you going to comply with the zoning ordinances to do that?
That's what I'm saying. And a lot of this happens concurrently. I've dealt with people that are in the process of getting licensed that don't own a piece of property yet,
Yeah,
Mhm.
you
right,
know, because, you know, even a business person looks at their financial investment
right.
and places a priority on where they're going to put their resources. You know, do I buy the land and hope I'll get a permit, or do I get the permit and then commit to buy the land and
I
search?
know for a fact that a lot of contracts on property were dependent upon whether or not
Yes.
they were approved.
And
If they weren't
Mhm.
approved, you know,
Yeah.
money goes out the
I
door.
use that term with people all the time when it comes to site plan reviews or special uses. We had a case just before the planning commission where Sims Brothers feed, you know, and the vet comes in. They had an option to buy the property
Mhm.
or a buy-sell agreement. And before they even did that, I told them, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a real estate agent, but you can make an offer contingent upon just about anything you want. And they did. We will buy your property if we can get the zoning that we need to do what we want to do.
Mhm.
And the same would apply, in a case like this.
Yeah,
But not many people want to wait for months and months and months.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So what is there in place to answer those questions?
There are zoning ordinances right now that are being worked on by the planning commission. And that's totally separate. To bring you up to speed, basically, if they brought the application materials into me and I consider them complete, I hand them to the board. If the board has their review elements in place and they say, okay, you're good to go. Here's your license to operate a Class C establishment. That tells them that they can now come back to me and make application for the zoning approval. And because these are special land uses, they'll require public hearings and have to go before the planning commission.
Mhm.
And they'll have to comply with all the standards and the ordinance that are being put in place for it.
What would prevent the board from meeting in closed session when they want to interview somebody about it so that it's not public information? I mean, that happens all the time for other reasons.
Probably doesn't meet the one of the few select criteria to allow them to go into closed
There's
session.
only a few reasons that the board can go into closed session. And we'd have to review whether that would meet any of those reasons. I don't have them memorized. But yeah,
There's only 3.
No, I think there's 6.
Running
More than that.
businesses.
That's a good question for the attorney, though, as
Yeah.
we relate back to the application and questions.
That's right.
If these are confidential, how could you possibly ask those questions in an open meeting
You wouldn't be able
and
to.
disclose that information?
You wouldn't be able to. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's something that has to be developed.
He's looking it up.
I'll let you know when I find it.
Oh, I have.
173.
Sure, you're coming right back, aren't you?
Yeah, right there.
Okay, I was getting ready to mark you absent. No. No, I was just,
One.
I was just going to ask the entire commission or the subcommittee here if we were all kind of on the same track of wanting the board, whether that's you or, I mean, you're the only board member here, well, Heidi,
Oh, Heidi too.
whether the board should continue to quiz or seek legal guidance on whether interview questions are even appropriate to narrow down,
Yep.
you know.
I think that's a great idea.
Prior to,
Say that again, Bob.
I guess we would advise the board at this point, it sounds like first, find out if pre-application interview questions are even appropriate
Yeah.
before distributing an application to an applicant. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, you might not be able to do that.
I think that's a great question for the attorney because there is quite a bit of question about that and the legality of it is definitely important.
Yeah, I think that's, the attorney's gonna have to be consulted about that. On the closed session thing, I'm just looking possible reasons. Here, one of them, there's several, there's more than 3. But one of them is to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute. So that's probably the reason the board could go into closed session to discuss the contents of an application.
On the second page at the top, where it requires all documentation showing the proposed permit holder's valid tenancy, ownership, or other legal interest in proposed permitted property and so forth. This is almost like they're gonna have to have it all written out, the exact question that we were just
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
do this, I do the same thing for a land use permit. If you are not the property owner, you have to have an agency letter, or you have to have a buy-sell agreement.
Right.
A lease agreement, something that gives you an ownership interest in that property to do what you want to do. Yeah.
My question to it, apparent, I guess, is why would we need to interview on this issue when the application requires a pretty clear statement on the behalf of the applicant to answer all those questions?
And unless it was part of the weighting that the board may or may not be able to use to say, okay, do you own it now? Are you going to be the owner operator, or do you just have an agreement? You're out in California, you just have an agreement that if you get to zoning, you can buy it. You know, it might play into their weighting if they're able to do that.
I may not understand this, but it seems to me that that's exactly what this says. They have to give you.
That's what they have to give us, but it's not saying that, you know, we're applying any weight to it. You know, you can give me the buy-sell agreement that you're agreeing to buy this property if you get it, but if he comes in and he wants to be the owner operator on his own property, the board may decide to just bypass you right now and go to him because he's already invested in the community, has his property, wants to run the business on his property.
This feels like we just changed the subject.
No, we're going right here, showing the proposed permit holders valid tenancy, ownership, or other legal interest in the proposed permitted property and the premises.
Okay, then.
You're showing the interest, he already has it,
Okay,
showing weight.
well, I guess what I'm
Either
saying is
one
it
shows the
sounds
same
like,
thing.
it sounds like we're sort of evolving here a little bit, that the interview is really more a review of the document.
Yeah.
And we're discussing whether or not we want to have some legal counsel advice on whether we can set up some
Deeper.
weighting
Yes,
of
Yeah.
various
an interview
answers
could be
to
a
it.
review of the document, yes.
Would that weighting have to be provided to the applicants? Or would it be something we just use
That's-
without telling them
That's
why?
a good point too. I know years ago when the medical marijuana, what was that, 2018, 17, 16? I forget now. You were allowed to put together a medical marijuana application review committee. And I remember the city of White Cloud doing this, where they put together, it was the chief of police, the city manager, the clerk, one council member, myself, and like 2 community members. But I right now, to be honest, I can't remember what weighting system they used, but I think it was shortly afterwards that they totally abandoned that because they had no clear written standards on which to place that weight.
Mhm.
And if you don't have the standards in writing, then you're
Yeah.
being arbitrary in your decision making.
That's right.
And so those would have to be published. They'd have to be publicly available.
Yeah, I don't know if they would or not,
Yeah.
but yet I don't know why they'd be a secret.
Yeah,
You know, because for transparency's sake, for applicants and the public, I think that would be, in my opinion, it would be available. I don't know what the board,
Is that-
everybody on the board would think about that, or what the attorney would think about that. But because applicants, if you scored an applicant and you denied a permit, then they're gonna wanna know
Why?
yes.
what criteria was used to deny my permit, so I think you're gonna
Are
be
you
telling
required
them
to
what
give them that?
criteria you used,
Are you
where they
required-
fell
Are
short.
you required to give them that?
Well, right now, we don't have it,
I
so,
mean, do you have to
If I
tell somebody
deny a
why?
permit,
Yeah.
I don't think it says in writing in our ordinance, but I'm familiar enough with due process to know that if I ever deny a permit, it'll be accompanied by a letter in
Mhm,
writing explaining why I denied it and
mhm.
what their recourse is
Okay.
when I deny it.
And so you were kind of by extension saying you think that should apply here.
Yes, yes.
So do we need to be looking at those weighting rubrics? Is that what we should be talking about? How
That's-
we set that up?
Well, that's what the board is seeking from the attorney's office, is some kind of rubric to apply to some other issues too in the township, but one of them was to apply to marijuana.
Hmm.
So I think we have to wait and see what the attorney comes up with on that. I'm sure this committee's gonna see them, this committee is going to see the scoring rubric
Oh.
that is come up with. I don't think I don't see how there can be any kind of secrecy to it.
Yeah.
You know, for applicants or the public.
So we hope for the benefit of the board, you know, seeking legal counsel that whatever rubric you use is,
Yeah,
you know, that would be your so-called standards of review that
That's
the board
right.
use.
and I think, I think that's where the board is going. They need some kind of, okay, we've got all this information, these
What do we do? with it
pages
now?
and pages of information
Yes.
from the applicant. What are we looking for in here
Mhm.
to help us make our decision on it? You know, well, they gave us 500 pages, they gave us 200. Does that mean, you know, we got more information from one
yes,
person than the
yeah.
other? No, you know, it's the content of the information. So, and, you know, I know that Chris Patterson, our attorney's office, told us at one time, probably more than once, that typically when, because they work with lots of communities, that typically, you know, these application documents on the first submittal, they're not complete. They're very often not complete, and but it's the zoning administrator who's going back and saying, well, you forgot this, and you forgot this, and that's why I think he wanted to put this checklist in here. But even then, they could misinterpret something here
Sure.
and not provide something that we intended for them to provide. And I see this application form having other, you know, other versions as it gets refined. You know, maybe we haven't stated something in here clearly enough to get the information that, you know, the information we're really looking for, but or maybe not.
So it sounds to me like we need some legal information on both the pre-qualification questions and the rubric
Yeah,
thing. Help us make a better decision.
I'm concerned, you know, I guess basic question to the attorney is because I think we're talking possibility of two sets of interview questions. One, are pre-application interview questions inappropriate?
right.
And if so, what type of questions should we or should we not avoid asking? And two, what type of interview questions can the board ask or should they not be asking? And how are we going to weigh those? And it sounds like the attorney is already working on something like that. And three, as we've discussed and as Cheryl mentioned, that some of this information or most of it is exempt from disclosure and confidential. Can the board go into closed session to continue that conversation with potential applicants?
Well summarized, Bob.
I'm just seeing who's typing faster, you or Lois, or you're talking to each other on chat. I don't know. It's-
You should see those cats.
Yeah, I think we can't get too far with that until we get some more information from the attorney.
Anyone else have anything on interview questions? I know, I think Cheryl has a heads up on that to take to the board. Lois has that documented in the minutes of the subcommittee, that's a primary concern.
You really can't think of any questions till you find out if you can even ask them.
Right, yeah. You know, before we spend any more time on that, we need to know. whether it's even
I got
worth-
questions, but
Yeah, I mean,
if you can't ask them,
right, if it's not legal to do it, or if it doesn't fit in our situation and we shouldn't do it, then we're just wasting our time coming up with questions.
Any other specific topics or anything the subcommittee would like to address this evening?
I had one. What can you tell us about? Where's that piece of paper? I got too many papers. About hemp and the new regulations on hemp and combining the agencies.
Well, I can tell you that as they're combining the agencies, and I should just copy and paste this because long story short, in 2018, the United States government adopted what's pretty much known as the Farm Bill in 2018. And 2020, Michigan just kind of paralleled it. And if you read the short version on the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development's website, hemp is hands off. You cannot control the growth, the processing, the transportation, the delivery of anything if they're licensed to MDARD. What you can do, which is still very little, is regulate the siting of buildings if somebody's building a new building. But if they want to build the new building to store their hemp in, you can't go into additional setbacks or odor or schools or anything like that. It's totally hands off for the most part. That's the abbreviated version.
What's this combining agencies thing?
Came on February 11th, Governor Whitmer. Would you like me to read it to you?
Well, what agencies are they talking about combining?
They combine the cannabis and hemp regulations to increase efficiency. On February 11th, 2022, for immediate release from the governor, Whitmer consolidates cannabis and hemp regulations to increase efficiency. Executive order consolidates regulation of the processing, distribution, and sale of marijuana and hemp into a single state agency. Governor Whitmer has taken the action to consolidate the regulated bodies within the state of Michigan that oversee cannabis and hemp processing, distribution, and sale to improve efficiency. These administrative changes will help the state continue growing the hemp and marijuana economy, create jobs, and invest in local communities. Consolidating multiple government functions into the newly named Cannabis Regulatory Agency will help us continue growing our economy and creating jobs, said the governor. And to be blunt, safe, legal cannabis entrepreneurship, farming, and consumption helps put Michiganders first by directing the legal windfall of tax revenues from this new industry to make bigger, bolder investments in local schools, roads, and first responders. Want me to keep going? Currently, the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, which is MDARD, regulates hemp, while Marijuana Regulatory Agency regulates marijuana. Governor Whitmer's Executive Order 2022-21 renames the Marijuana Regulatory Agency as the Cannabis Regulatory Agency and tasks it with regulating and processing, distribution, and the sale of both hemp and marijuana moving forward. Oversight of hemp cultivation will remain with MDARD. This restructuring will allow for a more efficient and effective administration and enforcement of the Michigan laws regulating cannabis in all its forms. The executive order was filed and will take place in 60 days. It was also renamed, the executive order also renamed the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs as Michigan Arts and Cultural Council.
They combined those, but it didn't change any of the regulations
Yeah.
applicable to either one.
It's just an administrative
Yeah.
thing with the state.
Well, and then a month later, March 7th, they got new adult use and marijuana, new fees. The adult use and marijuana application fees were lowered from 6 to 3. Adult use establishments removed, tiers were removed, licenses who have already been invoiced and renewal fee are to pay the fee as invoiced. So there's a bunch of other rules that are changing. So I guess we got to make sure we got all the updated rules.
Those sound like rules that were changed at the state level.
Yep.
As far as I'm aware, nothing has come down to local government says we have to change our rules. It sounds like more of a processing thing on the state's end.
Yeah.
Any other topics that the subcommittee would like to discuss this evening?
I wanted to bring up the flow chart thing and ask, I've never created a flow chart. Have you ever created
I
a
should draw
flow
little
chart? Barb?
bubbles and squares, but I
Right.
get confused when I
Yeah.
try to do it on
Talking
the
Gantt
office.
chart?
What's that?
A Gantt chart,
I don't know what that is.
this property, I'm gonna dig the hole, I'm gonna put the foundations in. It's usually
Yeah.
chronological and.
Yeah,
going
yeah,
down
yeah.
Steps of what's
Yeah.
gonna happen.
Do you know how to do that, David?
Yeah, there's software that does it really well.
Oh,
mean,
that's
don't
what
do
I
it on
wondered.
WordPerfect.
If there was some kind of software that we could use instead of reinventing the wheel. I don't want to
Are you
reinvent the wheel.
looking for specifically Whitewater Township that would show what happens first, what happens second, what processes can happen concurrently?
Yes,
Type of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
because it's been my understanding that an applicant could, I don't know exactly how this is meant to work, but that an applicant could file their application, this application we're talking about here, with, the township, the zoning administrator's office. And then they also can concurrently, as you say, apply for their special use permit. And they could have those things happening at the same time.
I would say that if we have zoning adopted that allows it, yes,
Right,
that could
right.
happen at the same time.
Right, exactly.
Yes, that's, I've seen it happen in a couple of communities. And of course, one is always contingent upon the other.
Exactly,
And the
exactly.
applicant needs to weigh that risk too.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
how-
Whether they
how
want to,
far do I go?
yeah,
Yes.
whether they want to go to that,
Yeah,
go to the, go that far to actually submit,
Yeah.
concurrent applications before two different bodies of the township. So when I was thinking about that, with respect to the flow chart, so how do you show that could possibly happen on there,
well, I would think, and again, I'd have to go back and read the ordinance. That's a good point. When a developer is weighing the risk, well, I'd want to go for my special use first. If that gets turned down, why even go through the
Yeah.
application process?
Yeah.
Or is the township board application process a prerequisite? The way I understand the ordinance, you cannot make application for the zoning until you've been granted approval by the township board.
I think there's something in here about that. See it right now. Oh, yeah, on page 6. So it says this section to be completed after review. So this is after the board has approved, so this is a form, a proposed form on which the board could approve the application for the following reasons, approve the application subject to the following conditions, deny the application for the following reasons, signed by the supervisor and clerk. And then at the very end, it says permit, because remember, we issue permits, the state issues licenses, townships issue permits. So permit contingent upon special use permit issued under the township zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So really, permit contingent upon special use permit. So,
How do you interpret that?
yeah, how do you interpret that?
I can interpret it both ways.
Yeah,
without a
that's
problem.
right. That's right, that you,
It's almost like the issuance of your permit is contingent upon the special use, but that doesn't make sense.
yeah,
How do we even know we're going to?
right. Maybe that needs to be clarified. I mean, I know that that's the way, the board wanted it, but so do you, because what you could do is you could approve the application subject to the following conditions, obtaining the special use permit.
And when you read it that way,
Yeah.
it makes it clear to me that he's not able to come apply for a special use permit until the board has made their final decision.
Yeah, I don't read that way.
Yeah.
I read it that they could be applying for that in the same process.
That's
But
why
not
we-
in the same process, but the separate process. that
Concurrently,
goes to-
yes.
Right, concurrently. So,
And there's no problem with that either if both processes are in place at the same time. If
Yeah,
the
well-
moratorium comes off on April 9th, And today,
Yeah.
and today is March 21st. On April 9th, there is not going to be a zoning ordinance that allows them to make application.
Right,
for
and
special
I'm,
use
and
permit.
I'm talking about when everything's in
Yes.
place.
Yep.
I'm presuming that everything's in place, this process,
Sure, yeah.
the zoning process.
To get everything going. at the
Right, I
same
don't, that
time,
wouldn't
yes.
make any sense
That could
if
be
the
done.
zoning wasn't in place.
Sure.
You know? So, but I don't think this precludes, this language doesn't really seem to preclude that they can apply for their special
Special
use
use at the
permit
same time.
at the same time. So back to the flow chart. You know, do we show two different lines on this flow chart and they're running concurrently?
Either or they can.
Right.
You know, once
Um,
they have. Once an application has been determined to be complete. And turned over to the board, that seems to indicate that. They could now make application for their special use permit as well.
Right.
If everything's in place.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. They wouldn't probably apply. But you said they might want to apply for a special use permit before they comply with all these requirements in here.
They could.
So
Good question for the attorney.
that is a good question for the
Procedural.
attorney. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they've said that it could be a concurrent process, but let me find out the answer to that question for the attorney. Can the applicant submit application to the board and the PC at the same time to get both of those processes underway? Or does it make sense to,
I think at the very least, the application would have to be deemed to be complete
right, yeah,
for the board before a zoning special land use application be accepted.
right. So I have the question, and if anybody wants to modify this, that's fine. Can the applicant submit application to the board and the PC at the same time to get both of those processes underway, or does it make sense to wait until the application is deemed complete before an application for special use could be submitted?
As long as the attorney understands that it's the application for board approval,
Yeah,
yes.
and
That's
the
deemed
application
complete
to the
before they make-
board
Yes.
is deemed complete before an application for special use could be submitted. Right, okay. I'll find that out.
I like that.
But thinking about starting to develop a flow chart, David, do you have a way that you could help us with that? Do you have this program or?
Yeah, I don't have it on my tablet, but.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
Would you be willing to go through these applications? And I mean, we don't have the zoning. We can't really do the zoning part of it yet so much, right? Or can we?
Nope.
Well,
But
if
at
you're
least-
involved in the process, I thought you were thinking more literal step one. Are there going to, is there the ability to ask pre-application interview questions? If not, then it's,
Yeah,
okay, you
Yeah.
need to fill out the application
real out.
for the
Yeah.
board
Mhm.
and it needs to be deemed complete.
Mhm.
Once it's deemed complete, then it can go to the board and they can move to applying for a special land use zoning permit.
Mhm. I'm just thinking, if you've got this chart with these different boxes on it, you know, like the first one, if we are able to ask pre-application
Yeah.
questions. So that would be a pre-application interview. Right, and then submit completed application to the zoning administrator. I'm not sure what all the steps actually should be. I think we're gonna have to develop that, but
I don't know who else or who would be involved in the pre-application interview questions if the board chooses that route.
yeah, I don't think we've discussed that, who would be involved in
You know,
that.
when I talked to Cash Cook at the village, it sounds like they had a committee of some sort that got together before, and I guess if you answered the questions right, you got the application.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the timing of that was.
Yeah, I don't either. I remember vaguely, but this might not be accurate. I remember vaguely that he was involved in the pre-application interview process, and I think their enforcement officer.
He did say his compliance officer was
officer.
involved, and he was involved only to the extent of more like an ombudsman, you know, just kind of sharing information
Right,
to make sure some other people, you know, were, I guess, sharing the information that they got.
yeah,
But I don't know, he didn't thoroughly explain how that committee made the decision to say, here's your application.
yeah, that's right, yeah,
I mean, do we even want to go that route? I think that will be answered when you get those questions or answers back from the attorney.
yeah,
To say,
right,
no, we're just, if somebody asks for an application, boom,
yeah,
and you'll have a scoring rubric. And I would probably add one other question in there, like we need to ask attorneys more questions.
Mhm.
But again, just like I do land use permits, they're processed into order, that not only that they are received, but during processing, that they're deemed complete.
Mhm.
If your application is complete before Mike's application is complete, you're naturally going to get your application processed first. So
Right,
how's that
yeah.
going to work for the marijuana applicants?
How's the order gonna be
Yes.
determined?
And I can tell you, if you walk in at 8:30 in the morning, he walks in at 9:30, and I've got 3 more hours to work on yours, you'd get pretty mad if I just set yours aside and I started working on Mike's because he has a nicer looking hat than you do.
Right, yeah, exactly. Okay, so also ask, how is the order of processing applications going to be determined? The order of processing applications. How should the order going to be determined? In other words, strictly chronologically? Or the first to complete?
The first to complete, because I could see 2 or 3 applications, piles of paperwork
Yeah,
being laying on the desk.
right,
And
yeah,
do I flip a coin, or do I look for the biggest stack or the
Mhm.
neatest handwriting, or
mhm,
do I try to review them all concurrently and weight them based on completeness?
yeah,
And say, well, you're
exactly.
more complete, so I'm going to try to get you to get your information first.
Yeah, right, yeah. Okay, I'll find that out.
All right, going once, going twice around the table for any other topics the subcommittee wishes to address. Heidi?
Yep, until you
Sure.
find out what kind of questions you can answer your stuff.
Mike,
No, I don't have any topics.
over at the far side there?
I've been working, as we've been talking, I've been working on some ideas of this flow chart of questions.
Great.
How do I then make this so that everybody else can look at it?
But before we go on from this into public comment, I have one other item of discussion, and that is obviously we're not done with our business.
1 second, you didn't answer
So-
his question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear a question. Was I out of the loop somewhere? I'm sorry.
I wanted, you guys are all professionals at this and I'm not, so I want to make sure that I'm following the procedures properly. So I've been working on this, the ideas that we've
Yeah.
been talking about here, and I have quite a list of stuff that I'd like to type up and make legible. How do I get that back so that the committee can have it the next time it meets?
I would say because Cheryl's been acting like the clerk of all clerks and putting out the packages, that if you were able to get some kind of draft to her, she could distribute it to us. So it would be part of our next agenda packet.
Yeah, I would do
Okay.
that. If you email,
Sooner is always better, but
I think if you just email it to me and then I'll just put it in the packet, the document as you
it'll be just
send it
like the
to us.
applications and
Yep.
everything.
In what format works for you?
Word, PDF,
DOC or DOCX? Do you care?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
that's Word, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question the first time, but I was leading to when the next time we might meet. I don't know how long it's gonna take us to get answers back from the attorney. I
Right,
don't know if it would be appropriate to ask the only board member to
board
make sure
members.
that our minutes are available to the township board so they know where we're at in this process and what our thoughts are.
Yeah, the board wants to see approved minutes. So
Mhm.
now that we have our first meeting minutes
Right.
approved, those will go in the next board packet for the
Okay.
4/12 board meeting. So we don't review draft and approved minutes. We just
Okay.
want to see approved minutes. We don't want to read them twice,
All right.
you know? So they'll be in the next board packet.
Okay.
Yeah. And then as far as when the next meeting is, we had talked about the third Monday of the month, but then I believe, Bob, you said. you've
Yes, I
got a prior
disclose that I
commitment.
will not be here the third Monday of the month. That doesn't mean that you can't meet without me. I would not be offended in the
And that would be
least.
the 18th.
But I will
would
not
be-
be here on the 18th.
Okay, so does I don't know what works for everybody, because I think we just move it to a different day when it does work for everybody.
A different Monday or just a different?
Yeah,
Mondays are
whatever.
especially good for you.
Mondays or Thursdays. Mondays I'm in Rapid River. Thursday I would be here. So
Yeah. So.
And are you
um,
sure we're gonna get all our stuff back from the attorney in 3 weeks?
Oh, yeah.
3, 4
Oh,
weeks?
yeah. They're very
Okay.
prompt with us. Yeah, we'll have that back.
So we'll have our next meeting be the 21st of April, the Thursday of that week instead of the Monday of that week.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, I'm good for it.
How about you, Mike? Thursday, the 21st? Or-
I think that works. I have a medical procedure happening next month, but I think it's the 14th.
Okay,
So I believe that would work. for me.
okay. It works.
When I get home, I'll double check. If
Okay.
there is a problem, I'll do it. I believe. it's on the first.
It works for me. What about you, Heidi?
I have no idea yet. I'll have to let you know.
When will you know?
I don't know, in a week or two. I don't know. That's too far off for me right now, Cheryl. I might be here, I might not. How's that? Is that a good answer? Well, I don't know what to tell you. You guys are now changing it to a Thursday. Now I have to rearrange a bunch of stuff, so it's okay. I'll let you know.
Okay,
all right, so tentatively, we're scheduled for our next meeting, April 21st.
do we want to do this? Do we want to pick a backup date in case that doesn't work for Mike or Heidi?
We can.
I'm wondering if we should. So what about the Monday, April 25th?
Is that MTA?
That's MTA. Are you gone?
That's what
Lois?
I'm asking, is it?
Yeah, it's MTA week, but it's not the classes day.
Oh.
I don't think
okay.
classes start on Monday, do they?
April 25th, I have a meeting that night in.
Oh, do you?
Westford County.
Okay.
I do too.
Oh, do you? Okay, so that doesn't work. Anybody got any other ideas?
Training.
The 19th, does that work for anybody?
No, I won't, I will.
Oh,
be
you
on my
still
way
be-
Back from Marquette.
Right,
That's
yeah.
my actual anniversary date there.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Well, let's just go with 4/21 at 6 PM. And if we run into two people who can't be here, then I think we'll have to pick a different date. I don't think we want to have two people gone.
No. Yeah. Not that we help it. Okay. And now we're down to public comment again. Is there anyone on Zoom that would care to make a public comment? Phyllis, if you could check, please.
Yep, there's a hand up.
Right.
Denise. Denise Peltonen.
No?
She's got her hand up.
Okay. No, Denise?
Is she unmuted?
I've asked her to unmute. Denise, can you hear us?
Okay, no one else in Zoom?
No, Vicky.
Vicky?
We'll go with Vicky.
Vicky, you have the floor.
Good evening. I wanted to thank you all for your time and effort on this very important topic. And I also wanted to thank you for having this meeting in the evening. I would love to see the board meetings be in the evening to actually allow more public input. So as I said, I would just thank you for having it in the evening to make it a lot easier for those of us that work.
Thank you, Vicky. Anyone else on Zoom to speak? No one else on Zoom? Anyone in the township hall care to make a final public comment this evening?
Yes, Linda Slopsma. So I appreciate all the discussion today. I thought it was a very productive meeting, so thank you. The one thing I would say is, I mentioned this in my first public comment, that, you know, it appears as though, you know, we really don't have all the things in place. And I think you guys touched on all those things. I don't need to repeat them to you. So things are not in place to start taking applications on 4/9. I think during discussion there at the end, some of you kind of mentioned that we should be communicating to the board to make sure they know your status. And then the comment was made to put approved meeting minutes, but those would be substantially out of date by the time you give them to that to them in April. So I understand that process and the inherent problem. I just encourage you guys to figure out a way to figure out how to accurately communicate where you're at in the process, because you're clearly not done yet. And I think we've already seen runaway legal fees in this township over the last 12 months. And so I would hate as a taxpayer to see that get even worse, because we know that the people that are growing and processing and selling marijuana all have quite a bit of money, and they're completely happy to sue you if they think you're in the wrong. Thanks.
Thank you.
Lois, can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. My fingers weren't moist enough to hit the unmute. My comment is going to be about your scoring rubric that you mentioned. I would like you to consider that the Whitewater Township needs funding for some infrastructure. And if you decide to put the marijuana industry into an industrial area that we could develop, and then have them contribute funds towards the 1.2 million water tower that it would cost, or that they would get extra points. And because we have ARPA funds that we can match to, or add to this investment, that maybe possibly the marijuana processors and growers, we have, I think, between 55 and 60 licensees. They can stack them, and we get them down to 14 or 15. I think they can stack up to 5. You could get a considerable maybe contribution, or I guess donation towards the township's water tower that they need, and that would provide further infrastructure for development along the commercial zone of the M72 corridor. And that would help develop the township. But it would be nice to get a coordinated plan in development, and that way, we could move ahead and not have to raise taxes or have a bond for development. We could work at this moment in time that we are going to have an input of business into the area that will have a substantial amount of money behind it, that it could help us develop our infrastructure. I would hope you would put that maybe into the scoring rubric if you're willing to contribute, if there's 15 of them, you could figure, 1.5 million, 100,000 a piece over a 5-year period or something like that. It would really go a long way, or maybe 50,000 right away. And then we can match with the ARPA funds and get the water tower. It's all something to think about. And that's on your thought level. It's just my suggestion. I don't know how difficult it would be. So that's it. And the other comment is with hemp and marijuana, the processing and the growing. I would like the hemp business industry to be stovepiped separate from the marijuana industry, so that only a professional could tell the two plants apart. There's varietals in between the two, and this and that. When the grower has plants and they bring it to a processor, the grower should be separate from the processor ownership, because otherwise it's like, I bring my product to you, you tell me what you're going, you could rate it anything you want. It could be low grade, high grade, and you pay me. You can say it's high grade or low grade and not pay me as much. And it could be really high grade. It happens in the cherry processing orchard leases all the time. So, or maybe happens in the orchard leases. So that's something also to consider, the co-location of processing and grower in the same area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments on Zoom or in the whole last call? All right, having no public comments, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
We have motion by Jacob and second by Bowman. Any discussion? You want to say or talk about it? Are you ready for a roll call vote? We'll call the question right now. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We'll stay here for a while. No fun. Motion, meeting's adjourned.
I feel like I didn't sleep here today.